So just FYI, did you all receive the images from the scene? I just sent those out this morning on behalf of the NTSB. So check your emails now to see, and if not, let me know, and I can forward it to you.
Oh, yep, I do have that.
Okay, I'll go to Ms. Green. Hello.
Hey, this is Nick. Apparently they sent out
When you all get done, can you check your email to see if you got the thing? I said, you know, so when you check the email, see if it's still here.
We get an email from who sent it back? No, they haven't done it. Bell Joyner sent emails.
No, I'm glad.
Check that out. Get some drone footage of that. That would have been from you. I still haven't been able to open it up and look at it. I keep forgetting and which ones come up.
I can do it this corner.
Sorry. I think they'll probably tell us. I don't think it was much more than 1 or 2 minutes.
I'm here for the press conference less than 10 minutes ago.
They didn't even look that big.
So are these and I travel.
The majority was in a room.
Okay, ready? Let me know when I should be sent to her. Like, I'm right sitting down. Oh, she's got away. Okay, that's fine. Thanks, Al.
Anybody else need any images, or everybody got them? Okay.
There wasn't a whole lot to see.
Kind of just stressed the area.
I'm having a hard time getting a hold of your guys' meet desk yesterday.
So, a lot of people are working from home,
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
unless you have a cell number or something, it's really goofy. I called the desk and it just rang.
Okay, yeah, can we just right?
And I brought a couple people.
Oh, I was just, I was out there yesterday, and it was originally this was gonna be a 4:15 yesterday. So I was trying to get over everybody else. Yes. So it was,
It was a bad day.
yeah, that would have been bad. I think that's what happened. I just went there and said, oh, there's some meeting that wants to talk to you. But I'm trying to get because I'm sure you press something. It was super interesting. And I usually don't like to talk to people when I'm talking. So I just get all. Yeah, I just hear my heart. We were joking about it. But here they are. He said, about 5 o'clock. Yeah, exactly. And then one guy was listening, he says, well, that means you'll be live.
Yeah, do we have your name?
He goes, okay, 4 o'clock. He said, well, we'll be live at 4 o'clock too, because they got 4 o'clock. And he's like, okay, 4:15, that way it'll be just before the weather, and they'll go. So then I think what happened was, they were planning on being done by Thursday, and they started digging out the nose of the aircraft.
If anything else happens down there, we're in trouble. It's gonna happen.
You don't need to buy cars.
Right.
Buy billboards, buy this, buy that. You don't buy smart cars that are wasting money.
Yeah.
You're wasting so much money on that.
All right, so we have our representatives coming in now.
Morning, everybody. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? My name is Michael Folkerets. I'm an air safety investigator for the National Transportation Safety Board. I'd like to start the presentation by offering my condolences to the family and friends of the two pilots who passed away. Certainly a difficult journey, and my prayers go out to the family and the friends. I'd also like to thank the local law enforcement and fire department, St. Charles County Police Department. We have the New Melly Fire Department, as well as St. Charles County Ambulance District. Their support on the scene was exceptional, and I truly want to give thanks to them, obviously led by a great group here. The purpose of the NTSB investigation is fairly straightforward. We're looking to try to prevent the next tragedy. The way we do that is we look at any factor that might have played in the accident, and one structure that we use for that is the man, machine, and medium structure. So as far as the man, we're going to look at anything that might have affected the pilots, their medical histories, their flight training, their experience. For the machine, we're going to look at aircraft issues such as recent maintenance or any airworthiness issues with the aircraft. And for the medium, we'll look at air traffic control, as well as the weather and other environmental type issues that might have influenced the accident. A lot of assistance in the investigation. The Federal Aviation Administration has 2 local personnel that have assisted with the investigation, as well as we have headquarters FAA individuals helping out with the investigation. We also had a rep from Textron Aviation, which is the aircraft manufacturer. And on the investigation, we'll also enlist the aid of a party member from the operator, which is Airlink. We also have NTSB specialists back at our headquarters assessing air traffic control, the weather, operational issues, as well as flight dynamics. Give you an idea of how our investigation reports will play out. Within the next 2 weeks, we'll release a preliminary report. All reports are available on ntsb.gov. And also, we have a witness at ntsb.gov. If there's any witness information that would like to be forwarded, is at witness@ntsb.gov. Following the preliminary report within the next 2 weeks, we'll have a factual report for the accident released in about the 12 to 18-month time frame. If there's an issue that arises before that, obviously longer time frame, we'll handle any safety issue outside of the report. Start off with some details of the accident. The accident occurred on Saturday, January 8th at 7:19 p.m. Unfortunately, the 2 pilots were fatally injured. There were no passengers or cargo on board the airplane. The airplane was operated by AirNet II, LLC, and it was a positioning flight out to Denver. It was a Beech Baron twin-engine airplane, and the airplane was manufactured in 1981. Airplane departed from the Spirit of St. Louis Airport here nearby, and it was on an instrument flight to Denver. It departed at 7:10 p.m., about 9 minutes prior to the accident. The airplane crashed about 6 miles northwest of Defiance, Missouri. The weather there at Spirit St. Louis was instrument conditions, It was a 1,000-foot overcast ceiling with 2 miles in mist. The cloud tops had been reported at about 9,000 feet by area pilots. The airplane, after it took off, climbed to 8,000 feet on a westerly heading, then it began a turn to the left back towards the east with a descent. ATC queried the pilots about their heading and altitude, but there was not a response back to air traffic control. The last data transmitted from the airplane was at 4,700 feet while it was in the left turn. The airplane impacted into a forested area. It was rural at a high airspeed on a westerly heading. Photos of the accident are available here from the St. Charles County Police Public Affairs Office. To give you an idea what's upcoming for the investigation, we're going to assess, obviously, the airplane's flight path and descent, as well as pilots' air traffic communications relative to the descent. We'll have a weather study of the flight to include icing and turbulence. We're going to continue our examination of the airplane today, including the flight controls, engines, propellers, and avionics. We will have an operational background on the pilot's assessment completed to include their flight training and experience, as well as a medical study on the pilots, which includes an autopsy and toxicology. We also have, fortunately, a doorbell video with audio from that. Was taken about 1/3 of a mile to the north of the accident site, and we'll have a sound spectrum analysis completed on the doorbell video with respect to the audio that was on that. That completes my initial presentation. I'd like to turn it over to the chief for the release of names.
So obviously, as was discussed, it was tough terrain. It was a difficult search mission to actually find the impact site of the crash. Through the efforts of local residents, our detective bureau, our crime scene investigators, the New Valley Fire Department, Chief Casey, their folks did a fantastic job of, once they got on scene, doing the investigation, going through the wreckage. And we worked with the St. Charles County Medical Examiner's Office to finally get a positive identification on the victims, which were identified as George F. King, 55 years old, of Westerville, Ohio, and Amanda D. Youngblood, 35 years old, of Huber Heights, Ohio. So that's all I have on the victims as far as information goes.
I'll take some questions. I want to stress we've just started the investigation. We have completed our investigation on site, but we're going to follow that up with an exam at the recovery facility. If you would please, let's try to refrain from what caused the accident type questions, why type of questions, but if you have a few what type of questions, I'd be glad to try to answer those.
You said that they're on an instrument flight to Denver. Can you explain a little bit more of, what that purpose of that flight was?
Okay, the flight to Denver was a positioning flight. This is a cargo airline operator, so it was a positioning flight to pick up cargo from Denver. And when I say instrument flight, you can either fly a visual flight or an instrument flight from a flight plan standpoint. If you fly visually, you have to stay clear of clouds. They were on an instrument flight plan, so they're allowed to go into clouds, and you have to have certain aircraft certification for instrument flight as well as pilot certification.
They were picking up cargo.
They were going to Denver to pick up the cargo.
Bring back to St. Louis or elsewhere?
Correct,
Back to
correct.
St. Louis.
Yeah.
Were they going to Centennial Airport or where?
That's correct. Centennial Airport in Denver, Colorado was their destination. That's right.
Has any meteorological information been evaluated to determine if icing conditions were present?
We have done some preliminary work on the weather. The freezing level was about 12,000 feet, so above the aircraft was the freezing level. At this point, we do not expect icing to have been a factor in the accident, but certainly we're going to continue to assess that issue.
And was this a twin engine or a single engine?
It's a twin engine Baron, that's correct. Continental piston-driven engines.
Do you have an idea what the safety record is on those planes?
They've been around a long time, the Barons. They've got a good safety record.
And I guess you're going to be looking at the maintenance records and haven't gotten to that part of the discussion yet?
That's correct. That's correct. We just, like I said, we've just kind of gotten on the site, completed the site work. We're going to transition to examinations at the recovery facility, and obviously maintenance records will be a piece of the investigation from an airworthiness standpoint.
So did they originally leave from Ohio, fuel up at Spirit, Denver?
I have an operations specialist that's going to be handling all that, but the last previous flight for this aircraft was the previous Sunday, and it came from Denver back to St. Louis on that Sunday.
And both the pilots, they were employees of AirNet II LLC, is that right? Or-
That's correct. AirNet II LLC is the operator, and the pilots were operating for that operator.
Was there ever any communication that they were having issues or anything?
There was not a distress call. There are some communications that we're assessing that give the impression that potentially there was an issue, but we need to assess those further before I want to go further with that.
Does that type of aircraft generally carry a black box that may be found yet?
No, the Baron does not have a flight data recorder or a cockpit voice recorder. It did have ADSB that was coming out. ADSB gives flight parameters for the airplane that's transmitted to the ground, and that, unfortunately, the last ADSB data was at 4,700 feet.
Does that include like engine performance and those kinds of things, or
No, ADSB doesn't have engine performance, just flight parameters.
like airspeed, direction?
Ground speed, altitude, direction, right? Thank you.
And were these experienced pilots?
They were. One of the male pilot had over 6,000 hours, as I understand, and the female pilot had over 1,000 hours, both instrument-rated commercial pilots.
Does it frustrate you as an organization that a lot of these planes, especially commercial planes, don't have any kind of black box information?
I would say we encourage the more we can use that type of information is absolutely valuable to an investigation. ADSB, frankly, is very valuable to the investigation. Unfortunately, in this case, it stopped at 4,700 feet, but yes, any kind of data we can get, we value that.
Any damage on the ground, or did they hit just a rural area?
Just a very rural area, no damage on the ground, but a very high-speed impact. And the photos have been forwarded, they very fragmentary type impact.
So they probably had a lot of fuel, fire too?
No fire,
Oh, really?
no fire.
Does that type of aircraft have like fire suppression in case of an impact like that, or was it just fortunate that no fire?
It was fortunate. I think you could attribute that high-speed impact, and it was raining as well at the time, to the lack of fire.
So the aircraft remains on the scene?
No, the aircraft has been recovered to the recovery facility.
And now you're gonna kind of try to physically put it together almost like a jigsaw puzzle?
You could describe it somewhat like that, yeah. We're gonna look at all the components that are feasible. I will say it is highly fragmentary, so a lot of the components are gonna be difficult to assess, but we're gonna do our best to assess any kind of mechanical issue with the aircraft. Obviously, we'll also focus on any factor that could have been there, to include the pilots, the weather. We try to keep an open mind with any factor that could have been relevant to the accident, because our goal is to prevent the next accident, so we try to keep as broad a perspective as we can for anything that might have played.
Can you say how many crashes you've investigated, and just, does anything stands out about this one?
I would say this is more fragmentary than most of the accidents that I've worked, a higher speed impact and more fragmentary, but other than that, it's we go through a fairly similar protocol for all our investigations.
I have a question for the chief. Can you explain, you said it was rough terrain to get out there and to, find these victims. Can you just explain what all was involved in getting, the kind of operation?
Yeah, to get a sense of direction, we needed citizens' reports of where the explosion was heard and the impact was heard. And to get that initially was tough. I think it was a matter of a couple hours before we actually, were able to locate the crash site. The weather was The weather was bad. You know, it is very hilly terrain. It was off the roadway, you know, so it was just challenging. Like I said, there was no fire. There was, you know, it was a challenging area to narrow it down to where the crash site was. So it just took a little bit between local residents out there, the fire department and the police departments searching. But it was just within a matter of, I don't know, a couple hours, you know, before the site was located. So.
I think that's probably good for questions. I thank you for being here. Appreciate your efforts. Once again, witness@ntsb.gov as an email if there's any information that needs to be forwarded to this or a future accident. Thank you for being here.
No, it's all right. You gotta watch